Good evening, everyone. I hope we're all doing well. I am Gabrielle. I'm going to be just in the background trying to sort things out and make sure everyone's doing okay while this conversation is going on. We are going to wait a little bit up until a couple more of our participants join in. So please feel free to just type in the chat your name, your current position, years of experience, and what you're looking forward to in the conversation today or what you've come expecting. And where you're logging in from. So whether you're based in Nigeria or outside of Nigeria, wherever you are, please just type that up in the chat so that we can get to know each other a little bit more while we wait. All right, it's 7:05. I think we're just going to start now. Okay, a couple more people are popping in. I think we're going to start now and just let everyone kind of shuffle in while we go along. So if our hosts could please turn on their cameras, I will stop sharing my screen. Fantastic, thank you. Thank you, Miss Tonia. Waiting for Miss Nancy. Let me stop sharing my screen so everyone can turn on their cameras. And we'll start. A couple of house rules. If you have anything you want to share, anything you want to say while the conversation is going on, please, you can post it in the chat so that, and I will be reading through and just gathering any questions that you may have while everything is going on. If you want to say something, it's super urgent, you feel like it's super key, you can raise your hand as well. And we might be, if we have the time, we'll be able to stop and really engage with you. But yeah, the chat is like the opportunity for you to engage as much as possible. So please feel free, send your questions, send your points, your contributions, your responses, and we will do our best to kind of key them in throughout the conversation. Good evening, Ms. Tonia. Good evening, Ms. Nancy. So glad to have you both here. Good evening, Dr. Joy. I can see cameras on. If we could have Dr. Joy's camera on, and then I will hand over to the both of you, to the three of you to start. Fantastic. Okay, so whenever you're ready, you can begin.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So I'm super excited to be hosting this program, and I'm super excited to have all of you here. I hope you can all hear me. Can I just have a yes in the chat box so we know that I know that you can hear me? Okay. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Okay. So my name is Nancy Omaballa. I'm an educational psychologist. I am a learning support coordinator. That is, I'm in charge of the SEND department, that's special needs. And I am also the pastoral care lead at my school. So today I'm going to be co-hosting. I'm going to be hosting with my co-host will also introduce herself. And I welcome you to this program. The program is going to be highly insightful. There are so many things we have to discuss when it comes to what teachers need to know about classroom processes, about taking care of people with special needs, about parents and how to handle them, how to write reports. There are different aspects we're going to be talking about today, and I'm sure we're going to have a fantastic time. So over to you, Ms. Tonia, please. So while we wait for Ms. Tonia, I can see your expectations there. Okay. Thank you to everybody.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Okay, good evening.
All right, good evening.
Miss
Nancy, can I go on?
Okay. Yes, please, you can.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Tonia Omolopo. Everybody calls me Miss Tonia because it's easier to pronounce. I am an early years educator and a play-based learning enthusiast. So I go about preaching the world of play. I'm a play evangelist. Some people call me the play evangelist, and that's okay too. Yeah, so I go about preaching the world of play to everybody. Early years educator, I'm a teacher trainer as well, and I am the nursery lead at my school. And it's so good to have everybody here. I love the theme of today, what teachers want to know. So as an educator too, there are a lot of things we want to know. We are going to be gisting, right? We're going to be gisting about so many things, and it's so good to have you here. So without further ado, I'm just going to take the first question.
Okay, I'll introduce myself before you go ahead.
All right.
For those who don't know me. So for those who don't know me, my name is Joy Issa. And yes, it says doctor in front of my name because I have a doctorate in education, and I focus, or my areas of specialization are in curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And for almost 3 decades now, I have worked in education in and out of Nigeria. So me in brief, that's it. All right, so Tonia, go ahead. Questions for us.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, so I'm going to just go straight into the first question. The first question is about lesson planning. How functional and relevant is the system or curriculum they run to this generation? That's
thinking about these things, I'm like, why did I agree to answer all these hard questions online live? We should have scripted this, but anyway, the whole idea of this was, to be able to answer the questions live and respond to people's needs, right? So for me, lesson planning is what some people call a necessary evil. I don't see it as a necessary evil at all. I see it as very pivotal to effective teaching and learning. Without good lesson plans, teaching and learning may not be as effective. So if we go with the flow, right, we just say, okay, this is a group of year 6 students, this is a group of year 2 students, this is a group of year 11 students or A-level students, university students. How do you determine the entry point and how do you determine progress? You use data, whatever data you have, to make those decisions. And in order to ensure that you are starting from a base and moving forward, you need a plan. There are different types of lesson plans. And I guess this is where, the wahala, as we say in Nigeria, this is where the wahala or the trouble starts. Do you have to write your lesson plans? Do you have to type your lesson plans? Are your plans so detailed that they include every single page number, every single question, every single anecdote? What kinds of plans you have to write? It is important that your plans kind of chronicle the journey of the lesson. At the end of the day, what skill will your students have acquired at the end of this lesson? Summary. So 2 key questions to ask yourself as you plan lessons. What skill would my students have acquired at the end of this 30-minute, 1 hour, doesn't matter. Second question, how will I know these students have learned these things? How will I know? What skill should they know? Should they acquire, sorry, at the end of this hour, at the end of these couple of minutes? And then how will I know? So that helps you determine your objectives, which will be around your skills, and then your assessments. So your learning activities are all there. You may put in details or not, but you need to have some review, some check. How will you know your students have learned? So those are like the big brackets. Depending on your school might require lots and lots of information. Your school might not require so much. As a teacher, though, it is important for you to know those 2 things. What do I want my students to know, to be able to do, and then how will I check that they can?
Thank you so much, Dr. Joy. I really could relate with that. What do I want my students to know? In early years, we call it we talk about the 3 I's: the intent, our implementation, and our impact. And that's how we plan our lesson in early years. So once you have those 3 on a lockdown, you're good to go, really. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, that brings me to the next question. The next question is on time management. Let's see. How do you effectively maximize a 40 minutes class, making it activity-based or learner-centered, and achieving learning objectives? Ooh, I like this one.
Okay, you have 40 minutes. You need a couple activities, and you want it to be student-centered.
Yes, and activity-based.
Back to your lesson plan. How have you planned the time? I have to say that teachers, we have a problem. We talk too much. Seriously, we all talk too much. We talk, and use up the teaching time in our conversations. So in a 40-minute lesson, the teacher should not be having more than a 5 to 7 minute starter to start off, to introduce the ideas, to give out the instructions for whatever the activity is going to be. And then during the independent activity time, the teacher's role is to supervise the learning that's going on. What is the plan? If I go back to the lesson plan again, what is your plan for supervision? What questions are you going to use to redirect behavior, redirect the goals of the activity and all of that? And then, so if we were to divide that time up, I would say give yourself 5 to 7 minutes to 5 to 7 minutes to be able to introduce that lesson at the beginning. Maximum 10 minutes, really. But I would say 7 minutes would be your target. And then you allow a 20-25 minute block for that group activity. One thing that teachers forget to do is to plan transition time. Children, especially when you're teaching, when your students are younger, they don't have this wonderful on and off button called self-control that most adults have developed. When you say, okay, boys and girls, time to pack up. Wait a minute, miss. Can I just quickly, and everyone's kind of, and so it takes a while for them to transition. We don't often plan for the transition. And then, especially when you're being observed or supervised, and then all of a sudden, it's time for them to get up and go to the next lesson, and you have not wrapped it up. You haven't checked, which is to your plenary session, which is where you kind of assess what they have really learned. So it's important to
plan for your transitions, the transition between teaching, direct teacher input, where the teacher's talking, to independent activity time, to feedback time. Let your students give you feedback on what they did, what they enjoyed, what they would do differently. And then the plenary becomes maybe the homework, or maybe some other form of, or some form of assessment in the room, and that's it. So please plan transition times, and don't talk too much. Those are the two suggestions I would have.
Thank you so much for sharing, Dr. Joy. I really, for us in early years, I would always say, like you said, teachers, we love to talk too much. I think we need to get to a point where we let the children take charge of their learning. They are able to, they can. I think when we trust I think if we trust our children enough to understand that they are independent enough to actually take charge of their learning, and that's where the deep learning takes place. Not even when you're talking, when they're more involved. So thank you so much for sharing that, ma'am. Over to you, Miss Nancy.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Issa, for the insight. But I'm particularly curious about one aspect of schooling, and this has to do with parents that owe school fees. Because as a teacher in the school, I have observed particular times where parents owe school fees, like cumulatively, and then by the end of the session, they just leave, and then you don't see them again.
Wow.
So this has made schools very skeptical about, you know, letting children that have old school fees actually stay in class. So now we have situations whereby, you know, they can actually like pull them out of class, having that embarrassing situation, like having them sit in the office and wait for their parents, and even having them miss school, thereby missing on a lot of learning, which will tell on their performance. So how do we actually deal with this? How can we deal with parents that owe fees?
Okay, I hear, so I'm hearing the teacher's perspective in that question. You don't want your students to miss your lessons. No, you want to be able to assess, and you're worried, you're concerned. And yeah, it's a valid concern. Where in this case, we're speaking directly to teachers who work in fee-paying schools, because there are teachers who work in non-fee-paying schools and they won't have this challenge. So for teachers who work in fee-paying schools, unfortunately, the school management has to run the school and pay our salaries, for example. So it is possible that management needs to make a demand for payment much earlier in the term. And not when you're attached to the student, you're really feeling that pressure of the student missing on vital information for the tests. So that, I don't think that is I don't think that should weigh heavily on the teachers' minds, even though it does, obviously, from the question that was asked, because people feel that in, yeah. So I think that is a challenge that should be handed back over to management. Where management, kind of deals with that. And perhaps there should be conversations around making the demands earlier rather than later. And in terms of management, really, because I mean, there are people in leadership listening into the conversation, it's important to negotiate these things way ahead of time. So instead of waiting for 2 weeks, you know, to the end of school, and then, you know, we pulled children out. In my experience, I have had to pull children out into the reception. As much as the teachers did not like it, I had to do it because reminders had been sent, information had been ignored. And so we pulled the children out of school to say they will not be allowed to enjoy the privileges of school because they're not free and they were not paid for. So it is emotionally tasking, and I hear the teachers feeling bad about it, but management needs to run the school effectively, so it does have to happen.
Okay, thank you so very much for that. So what we've got from here is that the demand has to be made much earlier. Okay, so that everything is sorted out way before we go way into the term. So another question I would like to ask, please, is about writing a good report. I'm asking this with particular reference to children that academically might not be thriving as much. So we have cases whereby reports state that, oh, this child in mathematics, this child is struggling, in English, this child is struggling, in sciences, like it's like sometimes you might just get this all bad report. So we want tips on how to write a balanced report such that it reflects all the areas of a child's learning, not just the academic aspects, and even in the academics, like those little things that the child can possibly do. How do we arrange our reports better?
The world is moving more towards comments-based marking than simple scores. And so if all of us move in that direction, where we base our feedback on comments that are authentic targets, things that the student did well based on the learning objectives, and things the student can improve on. By the time it is time to write a summative assessment, which is what we call a report, maybe half term, maybe end of term or end of year, we have a culmination of targets we can reflect on. We can say, okay, Joy is beginning to, let's use an early years example. Joy is beginning to form her letters following the correct direction. Very, very specific target. So that by the time it is the end of year, Joy is able to form her letters correctly is the final report. So as a parent, I can see that it was, initially Joy was beginning to form the letters, even in the right direction. So instead of going top down, she was going bottom up at the beginning, but she was forming them, just the direction was not correct. And, you know, you can account for progress. So some schools have report banks, and a lot of us, these things are available online. This is why we preach the gospel of professional learning communities. We don't learn in isolation. Find professional colleagues that can support you, that you can collaborate with. And so you have these banks of report comments that can ease your thought process. But remember what I said, you don't just wake up and write these reports at the end of term. Even in your marking throughout the term, it is important to use comments to give feedback to the children and not to say 6/10, good effort. What does that mean? Yeah, what was good about the effort? And effort in what? Was it the way I wrote? Was it the presentation? Was it the content? What exactly was good? And then what would you like me to do better? So that transition, it takes time. Disclaimer, it takes time. And it takes practice. However, you will discover that when this becomes a habit, it's much, much more effective. Comments-based feedback, very, very important. And at the end of the day, your reports will be easier to write.
Okay, a follow-up question, please. Does this mean that we have to completely take off the scores, or we put in the scores alongside the comments?
The scores don't have to go, but scores should be relevant. So you have to think about the ages. I don't understand why we give scores in early years, for example. The children don't understand what that means. The children will appreciate a smiley face next to maybe handwriting or something, and maybe a straight line face or a sad face next to something else that you can read to them. A score is meaningless on its own for learning. It is a judgment passed on my piece of work, my sums, my writing. I have a score. However, a comment tells me what I've done well and what I can improve on. So in order to have both, because there's some parents that be like, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but what did she get? What's the percentage? Did she get 10%? Did she get 20%? What's the percentage? So we have these things called rubrics, right? And rubrics are basically your set of criteria written out, and you can put a score to say, okay, if the handwriting was great, 2 marks. If this is a piece of writing, for example, handwriting was great, 2 marks. They focus on your topic. They actually wrote about what you asked them to write about, give them another score. And you just keep going that way. And then you total the score from that rubric. So you see how you can still, you give your comments-based feedback becomes very easy and clear because the comments are tied to, oh, the bits of that rubric, the objectives Joy was able to meet. Joy, you achieved, well done for the 2 things she met. And then the ones that are unmet become the targets automatically. You don't have to create, some fancy comment from out the blues. No, it's very, very clearly linked to the learning goals and learning objectives. I can now put scores to those, I can add numbers, to the rubric criteria, and then you can make them into percentages, you can make them grades, you can put bands, whatever you want. So you don't have to get rid of the grades. However, the grades are meaningless without the comments that help your students improve.
Well, thank you so very much. I can see that working because now the students can see what they've been able to do and what they need to work towards. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Issa. Over to you, Ms. Tonia.
All right, thank you, Ms. Nancy. So, Dr. Issa, I have colleagues, educator friends who would like to know, or who would like to do better. They want to do better. They want to be better teachers, but they don't know how to go about it. So they want to know where to start from, what certifications they can take, how can they discover their areas of strength in education, where can they get access to low budget courses for them that are relevant for their career path.
I like that question. Low budget courses. In view of the fact that, yes, in almost every single country in the world, teachers, we're sort of like at the bottom end of the ladder, the bottom rung of the ladder. And so we don't always have many coins in our little pockets. Fine. However, we have to improve our practices. We have to do better. And again, this is why I preach the gospel of professional learning communities. Find a community of colleagues that you can connect with, people you can learn from. And these colleagues can be, these communities can be cross-disciplinary. So the fact that I'm the science teacher in some secondary school doesn't mean I can't connect with a primary science teacher or with the A-level teacher who teaches science, or maybe a university teacher who's teaching entry-level specializations in science. The goal is to improve my subject knowledge so I can connect with the SMEs, the subject matter experts, but also, so I can do that if I'm like focusing on the science example, but I also want to work with people who can help me and who I can help. So if I'm an early years practitioner, I want to work with people who work in the early years. I want to connect with those people. How are you teaching, how are you teaching the sounds? Is there a new way that sounds are being taught right now? I want to connect, I want to make those connections, and that now becomes a low-hanging fruit. So connections within your school, connections within your community, attend an education conference that's going on. Make those connections. The business people have been taught these things, or exchange cards, exchange numbers. As educators, we must do the same thing and build these learning communities. It is also important to improve subject matter expertise. So our knowledge and skills have to improve. There are many, many courses available, lots of platforms, Coursera, Allison, lots of free things. At ISED, we also have some courses, but ours are not free. No. It is important to find the courses that resonate with you. What do you want to know more about? We are not supposed to be jacks of all trade and masters of none. No, that is not our calling as educators. It is important for us to know a little bit about a lot of things, because when your students are asking questions, you give them something, but it's also important for us to realize or to recognize that we are facilitators of learning. Our primary assignment as teachers is to facilitate learning. So improve your facilitation. Improve the way you drive teaching and learning. Improve how that conversation is going on. And that way, you are improving yourself in terms of your skill. So while we love these certificates and we want a certificate in this, that, and the other, certificates are not the only way to improve. Find a community of industry experts, professionals that you can connect with and you can learn from. One skill I've gotten, which is why I do what I do a lot, is coaching and mentoring. When I started off in my second year of teaching in 1996, gosh, that's a long time ago. In 1996, it just, the number kind of flashed in my eye. I'm like, I should stop talking about those numbers. Anyway, 1996, I remember an internal a training program the school organized, just a simple handwriting exercise that was very revealing about how differently we all thought the letters should be placed between the red and blue lines. Like, it was very interesting. And that lit a bulb in my mind that shared understanding within any learning community is important professional development. We don't always have to go outside and learn something big and fancy. Can we learn from the expertise in the room? Can we learn from that and arrive at, can we improve ourselves? Can we grow collaboratively, which is your professional learning community within your school? And then we now stretch that out. So good professional development is not always about money. It's about harnessing the potential within your community.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. I remember someone saying that social media is the new CPD. Like, professional development is everywhere. We have Facebook communities. We have, yes, we have LinkedIn. We have YouTube.
Yeah.
So like you said, it's not really about money. Collaborate, look for people in your industry. Thank you so much for sharing that, Miss Nancy. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Miss Tonia. Thank you, Miss Dr. Joy. We're gaining so much from this session, especially with CPD. I've always assumed that, you have to go for this very fancy certificate before you can actually prove that, yes, that you are qualified to do some certain things. But I've gained that, we can, even from the little experiences from experts in our workplace, social media, as Ms. Tonia has spoken about, we can actually grow our knowledge base. So
if I may interrupt, it is important for the knowledge to be relevant to our current practices. So there's no point in my learning something about, I don't know, I learn a lot about things, rocket science. That's not in my purview at the moment. So while that may look like what's trending right now on social media, that's not necessarily what I need to improve myself. It's also important to do personal research. So something might look great on social media. It might look like, this is the next best thing since sliced bread. What is the science behind that? Can we research? And this is one thing that teachers expect children to do, but we don't do it. Sorry, I'm throwing us under the bus. However, we need to do our own research. So if the teaching methodology says, or let's even say, okay, you're teaching in a Montessori school. What do you know about Montessori practices personally, apart from, in addition to your Montessori training, or even if you're a trainee, what can you find out? What does the research say? And not just random posts, authentic research. Very, very important for us to do that so that we can sieve through the myriad, of information that's available online and get to authentic information.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Isa. Thank you so very much for this. So now we're moving to another section, which is a section that is very, very dear to my heart. And this is managing students with special needs. I know that from your extensive experience, you must have worked in settings that have children with special needs. So we want to pick your brain on what innovative strategies that you have used, or what innovative strategies that do you see having, you know, promise basically in the education setting when it comes to dealing with children with special needs?
A lot of children have been wrongly labeled as maybe being autistic, for example, when they have Asperger's, they have Down syndrome, they have Q21, there's so many other things. But because autism has been at the forefront of the social media activity and webinars and things, you know, we erroneously say, oh, she's special. That Joy is very special. She's autistic. She's on the spectrum. What does that mean? We need to move away from the suspicions based on the checklists that are posted online. So, okay, this is a checklist, and then, you know, you do that. That can help you as a teacher to recognize that, okay, Joy might need additional differentiation as I teach. But it does not give us the right to diagnose a child. We are not evaluators, and it takes a lot of training, and you need to be licensed to give an evaluation and a judgment call to determine whether Joy is autistic or not, or she has dyscalculia or dyslexia or dysgraphia. Very, very important. However, when you get the evaluation saying Joy has dyslexia, what are you supposed to do with her? That's where the research comes in. What do the specialists suggest you do when you encounter a child with dyslexia? So even if you don't have a formal evaluation, if you have a suspicion, or if you feel a child is at risk of, you can try out some of the strategies without the label. That's what we've done. That's what personally I've done in my experience. If I think something is wrong with a child, I go on Google Scholar. I go online and type up some of those symptoms, and it's what do you do to support the child? What we do recommend is escalate your observations to management, so that suggestions can be made on, you know, getting the child evaluated, tested. However, before that even happens, or while that is going on, as a teacher, I can just do a quick Google search, get some of those strategies, and begin to implement them without the label, please. We are not licensed to label children, and we need to stop doing that.
Okay, thank you so very much for this. It is very important for me to highlight what you've just said, which is insisting on an assessment, because
Yeah.
I go for community development services, whereby we go into school to talk about special needs, and we see a lot of neglect. Okay,
Yeah.
once a child is labeled by the teachers or people, yes, around him or her, we see a lot of neglect. The child is just put aside. Oh, you're special. There's nothing we can do to help you. Okay. So firstly, insisting on an assessment is very, very important. It's something we need to ensure, and watching the way we label the students. But now, ma'am, we want to take it in another direction. There are some children that have challenges that are not as severe. We say that they are mild, okay, such that they appear to be typical, okay? They can socialize, they can do one or two things, but we might have some aspects lacking, like retention, okay, ability to assimilate, and, you know, all those little things, comprehension deficit that teachers might not understand as much and even acknowledge. Now, I want to please ask for what strategies can we adopt? What differentiation strategies can we adopt as teachers while working with children with mild challenges in the classroom?
That's such a great question, because one of my colleagues, Dr. Babalola, says, who defines normal? Who defines this normal? that we're putting children in. We're saying, okay, you're normal and you're not. What is your definition of normal and who gave you that definition? Learning differently, being neurodivergent, as it is called now, is a form of normal. What previously people would have deemed atypical, abnormal, irregular is neurodivergence. So when you have neurodivergent children in your classroom, it means we are stimulated in different ways. We learn differently. We connect differently. As a teacher, do I know anything about connecting children, about hitting different connection points? Do I know about, dual coding, for example, where I use text and I use pictures to stimulate both sides of my students' brain? Do I understand that children who have shorter attention spans need to shift activities, even adults, to be honest, need to shift activities every couple of minutes? So expecting them to sit down and listen only to you speak for 12, 15, 20 minutes is a real challenge.
True.
If I plan, now back to the first thing we said at the webinar, if I plan my lessons effectively, where I have planned for 5 to 7 minute direct teacher input, 10 minutes maximum if the children are older, I get the students to give some feedback based on that. Let's talk through this. Let's solve a question. Let's think through a piece of text. And they do that collaboratively in their group. And then they come back, maybe do some independent reflection activity or solve some questions in their notebooks by themselves. You vary the pace of the learning. You vary the timing of activities. You are supporting neurodivergent learners by default. Where we believe that the way I was taught in 1945, where my teacher stood in front of the room and told me what to do and I did it, because she had a stick in her hand, and if I didn't do it, bam, on my wrist, where I believe that is the way to go in 2023 is the problem.
True.
We need to understand that the world has evolved and continues to evolve, and our understanding of the way the brain works, the way the human physiology and anatomy and biology works is growing and is increasing. And so differentiation therefore becomes, differentiation should not just be about learning styles as we knew them before. The 4 learning styles or the 3 learning styles. I wonder who can post it in the chat room. Let's see. Who remembers the traditional 3 learning styles or 4 learning styles? Let's see if we can get our first person to post them in. So I won't say anything about it until we read what's in the chat room. So we look at those traditional learning styles. Okay, I see somebody already. We'll get some more. Differentiation right now is about hitting children at different points so that they can achieve the learning outcome and show you their learning in different ways. So it's not just about, okay, have I included a few pictures for, somebody said, the visual learners? Is there something a little bit to read? Is there, okay, someone is saying kinesthetic. Is there something for people to do with their hands? Am I using, okay, Karen says audio visual, okay. Am I making the lesson all about the teacher as opposed to all about the learners? Fantastic. Lots of comments in the chat room. Brilliant stuff. How are we? It's not just about those. Okay, so we remember the traditional learning styles. I think we have them all in there. Fantastic. Differentiation right now is about hitting the neurodivergent learners in the room. People who not only need auditory stimulation, they need physical. Some of them need all 4. Some of them need just the 1. How do we allow for this divergence in the 40-minute lesson, like someone said? We need to plan for it. A practical example that I like to give. if you have a big question, what do we know about forces around us in the world? I love this question a lot. What do we know about forces around us? And let's say we put this to year 6 or year 5. Most of them will give you science-related answers. They'll tell you push, pull, gravity, air resistance, they'll give you lots of those things. And then we push the learning and say, there are other forces around us in the world that make us do things. And then you might hear things like, oh, the Jedi, the force that is with you in Star Wars. You might hear things like, oh, the spiritual force, which you can call the force of belief. You believe in something supernatural that helps you. And then you might say, okay, but there's a force that helps us buy things, that compels us, and then it's driving demand and supply kind of comes in. So you use different examples to drive your students' engagement. After all of that, we now need to summarize that learning. So what have we learned about forces around us? And then they write, maybe they summarize the learning and they give it back to you. They could give it back to you as a presentation. They could give it back to you as an essay. They could type it up. They could write it, allowing for that divergence, even in what your students give you. Where the challenge comes is in the marking. If I have planned to mark a piece of writing and you give me a PowerPoint presentation, what am I supposed to do? I get confused. I might be flustered. I might not know what to do. However, if I have developed a rubric with the criteria listed and marks for the different criteria, it doesn't matter whether it's in a PowerPoint presentation, you record a video, you write an essay. Can I see these key points? You can still get the marks. So planning for neurodivergence is now the way to go. It's not just about VAC, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, Plan for them to give you the feedback in different ways as well.
Okay, thank you so very much, ma'am. Thank you. But I want to ask, you said differentiation is hitting the learners differently, in different ways, okay? I have always had these issues with teachers in exam classes. Okay, so they always come to me and say, oh, you're telling us that we should differentiate, we have a target, we're preparing for common interest, preparing for this, we're preparing for that, that no, this child has to just go do it. And I see that my child is being frustrated by being forced into this system. But they are like, oh no, if this is an examination class, that differentiation can happen from year 1 to year 5, or from year 1 to year 4, from year 5 and 6. This child, we just have to go through the
You need to memorize this information so they can pass the exams, or the parents will be upset.
Yes, I need advice. What can we do?
I hear that, and yes, that is such a powerful question or observation, because yes, lots of us as educators have gone through this challenge. When you teach when you teach the way we are suggesting right now, when you aim to hit the children, you get them to hit deeper levels of conceptual understanding, so that regardless of the framing of the question, because of their deeper levels of understanding, they can apply the answer in different ways. I have to say, though, that teaching concepts, teaching ideas, teaching topics is different from preparing students for examinations on those topics. We cannot keep teaching to the test as a way of teaching. No. Teach the concepts, teach the topics, then help our students prepare to answer these high-stakes standardized assessment questions on those topics. Those are two very different skills. If we prepare children to take an exam, they are more likely to succeed. However, if you prepare a child who has deeper levels of understanding to write an exam, the child is more likely to get an A star, to get the highest score possible, because regardless of how the examiners might play around with the wording of the question, the child has a deep understanding of the concept or the topic. So for teachers in exam class, I've taught exam classes as well, all through. In 12th grade, where I was supporting the correspondence students at the school where I worked in between 2000 and 2003, you know, those students really struggled with, you know, the exam. It was a challenge for them, let's put it that way. It is important for us to be mindful of the difference. It's important to be mindful of the exam board's requirements, what success looks like in the examination, and integrate that into our lessons. Simple case in point. Let's not use science, let's say history, geography, any of the humanities subjects. Children may understand chronology, may know how to put the dates in order, what caused the wars, any, let's be non-partisan here. Let's use a neutral war. Let's see. The Great Wall of China. Okay, so let's say what caused some warring fractions in ancient China. And the students have, you know, they've chronicled the dates, they can put them together. The difference between a B and an A star will be the writing technique, the linking of the paragraphs to form a well-structured piece, for example. That skill can drop the child from the A star to the B. The content is important, but the skill of writing is just as important. Do I have my point? Can I explain it? How many explanations can I use? And is there a link to the next paragraph, to the next topic sentence, depending on what you call it in your organization? The writing skill is just as important as the content. So we shouldn't only focus on, you know, these, and I mean, I'm just reminded of the WIEC results, or WIEC feedback from WIEC. WIEC is the West African Examinations Council, and the council publishes their feedback on exam scores, just the same way other international exam bodies, GCSEs, IGCSEs, A-levels, you can read through. When you read through the examiner's feedback, you will see, and it's incredible how this, you know, happens frequently. We see a lot of children losing marks for writing conventions, simple writing conventions. And yet the teachers will say, oh no, you know, this topic in history, this topic in science, we have to really, not necessarily. If you teach Joy how to think, you teach Joy how to write, you teach Joy certain skills that she can transfer across subjects, she's more likely to succeed. So I think it's a myth to say we have to, you know, go through the content so much or the children won't pass. You're not there in the exam hall. Teach them how to think. Teach them how to structure their essays. Teach them those skills. Give them the content. They will answer it beautifully as we give them practice. And I can see both of you trying to interrupt, but one last thing before I stop talking. You know, we teachers talk too much, right? So I'm doing it again. It is important to practice how to answer these high-stakes questions and not just to give them the questions. Excuse me. So sometimes teachers will just go, oh, question 1 to 10, answer. Excuse me. No, can we try to answer together? Can we learn how to answer these questions first before we have to answer them? Over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. ISED. I've in fact, as you were talking, I was just going over my own class as well, because when Miss Nancy said it, I also have that struggle with I think mine will be for my neurodivergent children who transition from early years to key stage 1, and there's just that breaking. It's only in early years you do this, you can't do that in key stage 1, and that's a struggle. And everything you have said, everything that you've talked about, I know I have a lot of teachers who are really interested in doing all of these things, but they have one major challenge: the school management. It's easy to want to implement all of these things, but then by the time you take this to the school management, with this good practices, 1, 2. Why is it so difficult? Why is it difficult for school owners to actually train their teachers so that they are well equipped for the kind of children that we have in this age?
Okay, as a former or current, former and current school manager, I'm smiling because I'm like, yes, here we go again. Throw the school leaders under the bus. Teachers, kudos to you, yes. School management has the responsibility to manage resources, human resources, financial resources. So sometimes difficult decisions have to be made, and these may include, spreading that training budget so that people from different departments get the training and the development they need. In my personal experience, I have seen there is zero, or there hasn't been any suggestion put forward tied to data that has been rejected. No single one. I'll say it again. In my personal career growth, before I even became a school manager and a school leader, every suggestion I brought forward that was backed up with data from the school and plausible research was completely submitted. Anything that we present as a way forward cannot just be, that's a great idea. I slept, I had a dream, I woke up, I think I want to do this. Absolutely not. What is the science behind what you're doing? What research supports what you're doing? What is the data? What have you checked? How can we trust that this idea, this strategy is grounded? I have to say that a lot of the things we're speaking about right now, at ISED, we have multiple courses that address some of these things. So these things cannot all be covered in one webinar. The purpose of our webinar really is to share best practices freely, to share recommendations, to try and build this professional learning community so we can all dive deeper into some of these things. So how do we get so back to research? You do the research to get support for your intervention, let's call it, and then you get data from your environment. Who is this intervention targeting? Which students are you trying to target? What is the expected outcome? It's almost like experimenting. However, you can't put children's lives at risk by trying out experimenting on some fancy idea you got after you had some nice tea and you slept and you woke up. It's important for the data to be authentic. It's important for it to be grounded in research so that it makes a difference. Like I said, in my personal experience, there's nothing I suggested that wasn't well balanced and grounded that was rejected. I mean, zero, almost 30 years. However, based on budgetary constraints, especially when it comes to technology, I had a few pushbacks where, Joy, that's fantastic, but we can't afford it. And for me at the time, I felt, what? Instead of having the Christmas party, why don't we buy those, new swivel boards? Or why don't we buy this? As a teacher, I felt, oh, get rid of some of the fun stuff and invest in this technology that was more important in the long term. Over time, luckily, in that particular incident I'm recounting, technology was upgraded. In Nigeria of today, where you have very interesting fluctuations in currency, school managers are even under more pressure to manage resources. And so, like I said earlier, can we look within and drive professional development? So I want to try something out. Can I speak to my colleague first and see if we can try this out together before I go to the school manager? Can I find someone within the community who can support me as I, trial this before I go all the way to the top? Then I think your other question said something about investing in professional development.
Yes, for teachers.
Okay. Again, in terms of managing resources, school managers are concerned that they train you, they, give you all the training, and then you go to work in the school up the road. And what happens to them? You leave them high and dry. So what do school leaders do to mitigate that? Many different things. I've heard all sorts of things. Some people have to sign a contract to say, okay, you work for the school a year after your training, or you refund the cost of the training. Some will say, okay, can you pay part of it? There are different strategies managers use. However, I think we lose out on the benefit of training when we don't have professional learning communities in our schools, where we don't have ongoing conversations around professional development. So if Nancy or Tonia went to learn about Montessori secondary interventions, okay, when they come back, can they talk to us about it? Can there be a little, and not just a 1 day, 1 hour debrief session? Can we set up a 3-week session where we review some of the information, we practice some of the things, we share feedback on what has gone well, what we can implement, what we might need to adjust, things like that. That is helpful, but the challenge, it's a risk that school owners have to take, because if you don't improve and develop your school teachers, your school faculty, your staff, well, then your school, gets left behind. So we need to just find the balance.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, ma'am. And I feel like some of the reasons, because I've heard other educators say it, while a lot of teachers will just up and leave, is because they don't feel supported. They don't feel like their school, like they have their back and all that. So I just want to ask this question. What policies should school leadership put in place to protect and support their teachers as co-stakeholders of the educational system?
The way you phrase your question already alludes to the answer. Do we see the teachers as co-stakeholders? And it's very important, because the teachers can make or break your school. A school is not grounded on Mrs. Issa, the best year 2 teacher. That doesn't make a school. That's one classroom. You need to have Mrs. Issa's, the best teachers in every class. And that's the responsibility of the head teacher, the school leader, to ensure that there is a competent, effective teacher in every single classroom. And so having that as a priority and understanding that this is a collaborative effort should now adjust our perspective to teacher, staff, to engagement, teacher management engagement, so our staff handbooks, our policies, our welfare packages. When you value someone or you value something, you put your money where your mouth is, in a sense. So if I value my teachers, I value my staff, admin staff, I see them as co-stakeholders. I ask for their opinions in the affairs of the school. So how many surveys have been administered, even if it's just a satisfaction survey? How are the teachers doing? How are they feeling? What's the workload? What can we do differently as we lead and manage them? And taking that data and actually doing something with it. Teachers are co-stakeholders in this field, business of education, and we need to see them as such, giving them the honor, the respect that they need, making them feel valued. And I have to quote Maya Angelou, the famous poet. she's late now, and she says, people don't remember what you say. People don't remember what you do, but people will remember how you make them feel. What you say is great, what you do is okay, but they will definitely remember how you make them feel. We need to invest more time in making our teachers feel valued. And that is not necessarily about money. Words of affirmation go a long way. Words of affirmation, recognizing people's effort. You know, if something goes wrong, apologize and actually plan the change. So where we as school leaders and school owners can actually offer an apology to our staff, we apologize for making a wrong decision, for doing something differently, and then we can, you know, effect the change that we have said we would do. That will make a huge difference to how we make our children, teachers, feel. And we know that they will stay longer. The school up the road might offer them 10,000 naira more, but they might have heard that the tension in that space might not be the best. And they'll be like, look here, or as we say in Lagos, let me just be calming down where I am and enjoy my peace of mind and my fewer coins, but I'm happy. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Issa. This particularly resonates with me. I will stay in an organization that values me. I would stay there rather than go to one that would offer me a lot of money, but there's so much hassle. Because the workplace is a family. Like, I leave my house very early and I get back late. So basically, I'm spending the productive part of my day at work. So I need to feel happy. I need to feel valued by my employers for me to remain there. So this resonates really deeply with me. So we're taking it a little more personal, okay, a little outside the workplace, but still connected though. Now, it is known that many teachers do not earn so much. They work for so long and they don't earn so much. And it is said that that a teacher's reward is in heaven.
Yes.
However, are we thinking about the responsibilities that we have? We have children's school fees, we have to take care of ourselves, the rent, feeding, the hardship in the country. We can no longer cope with earning so little. So this brings me to the question, how can we earn extra income as teachers? With particular reference to time, the fact that we go to work really early and come back really late. How can we navigate all of this to earn more income while working, please?
Wow, I am not sure I'm qualified to answer that question. I have to admit, just because it has really been a challenge trying to ensure that you know, we're all the ends are meeting. Let's put it that way. Depending on your state, your school situation, depending on the salary scale in your organization, what I consider a little money might be, wow, if only I earned that much money. So teacher A may be living in a state, in a rural community where earning a certain amount of money might be okay because rent is paid, feeding is available, and maybe tuition is free for the children. In a suburban community, the money doesn't count. In a fully urban metropolitan community, that money is for transportation only. So earning more money has to be really put in the right perspective. It is important for all of us as teachers to be able to budget effectively. That's where I want to start this conversation from. Yes, I'm not earning enough money, but how am I managing my little income? How am I managing what I'm earning at this time? And then what does more money mean for me? How much more do I need? I remember in my early days when I wasn't in management, I would take on 1 or 2 external tuition opportunities. I would. My children were young at the time, and for me, it was important to spend time with my children and to also be able to volunteer my services where I volunteer them in church at the time. And so I really had to live on a lean budget, very, very lean budget for that period. Thankfully, my husband, absolutely supportive, provided a lot as well. And so between the 2 incomes, we were able to balance out. But there are people who have the teacher salary as the breadwinner's salary. We have to manage our expectations. That's the reality. That's our reality. And so we know teachers who have moved houses, who have moved family situations, who have moved to find greener pastures. We've had teachers who have even taken a pay cut and moved to a less expensive community, automatically improving the quality of their lives. So budgeting effectively is point number 1. What is my budget? At some point, I remember clearly, I mean, I'll go to the granular detail. How I started, you know, I budgeted how much I would use to braid my hair. And I'll be like, look, Joy, you can't be doing those fancy hairstyles that, you know, and then they look very nice, but they last 2 weeks. That's not sustainable. You can't afford that. And I had to think of more viable alternatives. That's how granular we need to go. You can't change your clothes every so month. You can't, you know, you have to really budget because of the choices I have made. I understand that I'm not going to be a multi-millionaire. That's all right. But my drive is not necessary. And I think it's a lot of us in education. We don't have, we're driven more by impact. The impact we make in the lives of the children drive us more than the money, or we would not be in teaching in the first place. People like us who have stayed long term, someone was teasing me, teasing a number of us, saying we are missionaries in the field of education. You know, we've given our lives to education and that's what we're doing. And I'm like, yes, most teachers are missionaries in the field of education, making a difference in their lives.
That's awesome. So I've taken missionary in the field of education. I'll just make a bumper sticker and, you know, put it up somewhere. That's nice. Thank you. So, ma'am, you own a school of education, the ISED School of Education, and you're a consultant to many schools, many top schools. Please, ma'am, could you share insights on the strategies that got you to the top of your teaching career right now?
Number 1, personal professional development. I invested in training myself. I saved my money. I did not buy handbags, and I would go on holiday and not splurge because the holiday was always around the training. So I would go on holiday to the UK, literally lived in the UK because that was just every holiday for months, training. I would put my children in a summer camp. You know, you book these things 6-7 months in advance. You don't book the 2 weeks before. You can't have, it's too expensive. You book these things 6-7 months in advance. I booked the summer camp for the children so I could drop them off, go to my course, go to my class, try, because I didn't have family abroad. You don't always have to have family abroad to go and get trained abroad. No, it's hard work. And yes, it was tough to juggle those things. And yes, you go abroad and you can't come back with 3 suitcases filled with, you know, all sorts of goodies because you spent 3/4 of the money on training. But I had a goal and I had a target to, yes, get to the top and to make a difference in terms of impact, to be able to influence change across education in Africa, because our problem is fundamentally a problem of illiteracy. The literacy levels across Africa, across sub-Saharan Africa, especially across Nigeria, are frankly abysmal. And if we don't do something about that, we'll keep, falling further and further behind the developed nations. So those of us in developing nations across Africa need to invest in education in ourselves so that we can come back and make a difference in our different nations. So that's how I got here. Saving, personal, professional development. And some of the schools where I worked contributed one or two of my courses, but for my main, all my professional development, literally my doctorate, my master's, everything, you just have to develop yourself, because you can't wait for your school owner doesn't know your vision for yourself and for who you are and what you want to do. You do. So you have to invest in your personal professional development and make the necessary sacrifices. That's it, really.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. So we have to start saving the little coins we have right now, and then we have to keep investing in professional development, because when opportunities come, we have to be prepared for those opportunities. Thank you so very much for this. Thank you. Is Tonia present right now? Because I think she left the meeting.
Yes, she is.
Oh, yes,
Okay,
I'm here.
okay.
I'm here.
Over to you, Tonia.
I'm
Okay.
back. All right, thank
Yay.
you so much. All right, so that was amazing, Dr. Isa. I learned so much, and it's the same thing we're always preaching. Your school owner doesn't know the bigger picture for your life, so you do. So you have to be able to make those sacrifices for yourself. Okay, so I want to speak on behalf of those teachers who want to, they're ready to make a difference, and they've been hearing and they've been seeing a lot of things. So we all know that technology is taking over right now, and you really cannot take away technology from the classroom, because everywhere you go, right, it is there in our faces. So we would just like to know how the role of technology in education, how can we utilize education for, how will I put it now, for the growth and development of our pupils, of our students in the classroom?
It's important to understand your capabilities, your limitations, your dexterity with technology, your personal dexterity. How much technology do you use as an individual? Without that level of comfort, you might not readily integrate technology into your teaching and learning. So as a person, do you type your notes? Do you, do your personal research? Do you play around with your presentations, not only for teaching, but, on other stuff? How much technology do you use as an individual? Do you use any of the AI platforms to do some of your own research and your reports so that you know how to put guardrails in place in your class? Do you understand the firewalls that are required? Do you understand the impact of having the impact of a digital footprint? Do you know your digital footprint? What else? Online safety. Do you understand the privacy rules, security things you need to put in place? So there's a lot we need to know as educators before or as we are integrating technology into our lessons. It's not just about opening a Google account and throwing your children onto Google Classrooms. What are the rules of engagement? What can they post? What can't they post? What safety protocols should they be aware of? Should they observe? These are things that we need to understand so we can teach them. Then we can begin to say, you know what? I think we can sign up with this online learning platform because their privacy laws are tighter than this other one. I think we should sign up for a paid so-and-so account and not a free so-and-so account, because the paid accounts have more security. Things like that. Shifa, can I just say shout out to Shifa? I see Shifa, one of my colleagues where I worked outside of the country. Thank you, Shifa, for joining us. It is midnight where you are. I'm so excited that you joined us. See ya. Dr. Shifa, yes. Nice to see you, Dr. Shifa. Thank you for joining.
Hi, thank you for joining. All right, thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Isa. And so this will bring me to my last question. What are the approaches that you would share in fostering a positive and inclusive classroom environment for children, both early years and upper and lower primary?
Let's ground that in the word positive.
Positive, okay.
That's when we focus on the word positive, then we ourselves begin to, orchestrate activities and events to ensure that our children are not afraid of us as they are learning. They're not afraid to make mistakes because of negative feedback from us or from the system. They understand boundaries, and so they're not afraid to try because they might get negative feedback from their peers. Is the environment safe? And by safety, I mean emotionally safe. So if I say something some people may consider stupid or unintelligent, am I going to be teased? And is everyone going to go as children would typically do? What should I say? What boundaries? What guidelines have the teachers in the environment put in place so I can feel safe? I can be open, I can be vulnerable, and I won't get trampled upon, I won't get pushed down. That is the focus of a positive learning environment. Second thing, if I break the rules, what are the sanctions? What are the consequences? Where there is no order, there's lawlessness, and lawlessness is not a safe learning environment. Every learning environment needs to have boundaries, rewards and consequences for behavior, for self-regulation, and for following external regulation, which is following the rules. So the focus should not be on punishing misbehavior, not at all. The focus needs to be on providing the positive environment and then redirecting the negative energy, because we will explore, we're children, okay?
Yeah.
We will push the boundaries. We will test you and see if, will be true to your word. If, those threats that we give, will be upheld. We will test those things. But where we are firm but kind, the children will understand those boundaries and they will respect them. Again, I keep saying this professional learning community because this is not something that any one teacher can push in isolation. This is something that needs to be a school culture for it to really thrive.
Yes.
It has to be a school culture. It has to be something that everybody across the school is promoting. This is a place of positive discipline. We don't believe in corporal punishment. We're not going to hit anyone on the head. We're going to push for effective behavior management, effective classroom management. These are the structures we have in place. These are the guidelines, and it's important, to have those. So the focus should be on the word positive. Not punitive, not controlling, but positive.
Thank you so much for sharing, Doctor. That's positive. So teachers, it starts with you, not your school management, not the school leadership, but you. It's in your hands to provide a positive and safe environment for the children. Thank you so much, Dr. Isa. It feels like we've sapped almost all the knowledge.
All the juice.
All the juice, but I know it can never run out. It will not run out. This is like we substitute. Thank you so much. Gabrielle, if you're there.
I am here. Yes.
All right.
So I'm very sorry to cut the party short, but we are perfectly on time, an hour, 30 minutes. Thank you everyone for joining. Before we officially close, I just want to give an opportunity. First of all, I want to thank our hosts once again for coming in, for engaging with us, for sharing your own perspectives as well. It was so important to listen, and it's always great to hear professionals speak to each other and listen to teachers, engage with teachers. I want to give you this opportunity to just share whatever is going on with you, a key learning point, and everything that's going on career-wise for you.
I think I noticed one or two questions in the chat room as we spoke earlier.
I believe.
Okay, there was something about retention. Did I miss that?
Yes, knowledge retention in the classroom.
Okay.
Okay.
How can we support knowledge retention? Again, I think what I shared earlier was, can we focus on the skill? If we get our children to develop the skills they need, skills to internalize information, skills to apply that information in new and varied contexts, then they're less likely to forget. So we need to move away from memorization, just getting them to memorize a couple facts. We need to get them to learn the skills of application. Those are hitting Bloom's taxonomy, those higher levels where you go to creation, synthesis and evaluation, creation, things like that. So it's not just about recall and understanding. So recall or remembering and understanding at the lowest levels. We need to go higher. You've taught them something. Can they apply that learning in 2 or 3 new, consistent, difficult contexts? They're more likely to remember that information. Okay, did we miss any questions? In case we missed your questions or comments, please, you can send us an email at admin@ISED-Africa.education. We're very happy to respond to any questions you might have, any additional questions or comments. Very nice to see some of my previous colleagues. Ms. Toby, nice to see you in the room. This is what I say about education. We're a learning community. Doesn't matter who was head teacher, who was not head teacher, it doesn't matter. We all grow together, we all learn together. So we should all really, maximize the learning opportunities that we have. Skills, yes, skills, very, very important, because the knowledge evolves. In fact, exam bodies change the knowledge. And so, okay, we're not focusing on Macbeth this year, we're focusing on Hamlet. And all of a sudden, whoosh, the children feel, I don't know what to do. However, if the focus has been on literary appreciation, figurative language, responding to text and things, the skills are applied immediately. And then there's no panic. Okay, back to you, ladies. So, Gabrielle, you wanted to, I'm sorry, I can't remember the question you asked.
It's fine. I'm here. Just wanted to give our hosts an opportunity to share either a key learning point or anything that's going on with them career-wise currently. So whoever wants.
I'll go first.
Great.
I'll go first. So for me, a key learning point for today's session is personal professional development, because obviously I want to keep growing in my field. And to do so, I can't just depend on the trainings that the school will send me to. I personally have to do something to upgrade my skill so that when opportunities come, I'm completely prepared for those opportunities. So basically, I work with children with special needs. Aside the work I do with my school, I have lots of seminars with schools, whereby I go into schools to help the school management with the process of admitting children with special needs and the process of having the facilities or whatever is needed to help those children thrive in the school setting. I also handle parents and student orientations in school. On social media, my social media handle for Instagram is Nancy_of_Sen. Okay, here I have different lecture series where I speak about special needs, and my particular focus is teachers. So I tell teachers the methods they can use in working with children with special needs and helping them thrive in an inclusive setting. So it's not just about having a child with special needs sitting and not getting any educational value. They're actually learning, they're actually thriving in the school setting. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Miss Nancy. Okay, thank you so much again for this opportunity, Dr. Joy. Thank you. I learned so much, even though I was a co-host. I learned so much. And when you talked about skills, it's sort of, how will I put it now, buttressed what I'm always talking about. My name is Miss Tonia. I'm an early years educator, early years enthusiast, because I'm about everything early years education. I believe that the first 5 years are very, very key and important in the growth and development of children. And I mostly talk about play-based learning. So when Dr. Joy talked about skills, it really, really resonated with me, because that's all play-based learning is all about. It helps children with the development of those skills without having to do so much traditional teaching or teaching the traditional way. And Miss Tonia on Instagram is still the same name, at Miss Tonia. On YouTube, it's Bloom and Cuddles. Bloom and Cuddles. So it's Bloom and Cuddles on YouTube. They are just share short videos of my classroom practices. I'm very, very keen on what goes on in your classroom. Yes, I love you. I want you to grow. I want you to develop, but I'm very, very big on what goes on in your classroom, how you're impacting our future leaders, because really this country needs to get better. So I'm very, very big on that. And so that's why I share my knowledge on YouTube. I'm currently working on my website where I'll be sharing blog posts and resources that you can also use in your classroom as well. Bloom and Cuddles as well. So thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Namaste.
Namaste indeed. It's great to see the learnings from people in the chat room as well.
Yeah.
Professional learning community, all of that. Amazing, amazing. I have to budget effectively. Fantastic, fantastic. Please share the takeaways with other people. I think we streamed live on Facebook, I think.
Yes, we did.
Yes.
Okay, so you can share that, reshare it with your friends and family. This is entirely free. The whole point is to get everyone learning. Let's support each other and build this professional learning community.
Okay, fantastic.
Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate every single person for taking out the time. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. Remember, I posted everyone's links on social media in the chat. You can always reach out to everyone if you just want to follow up on any of the information that you've heard today. And we look forward to seeing you all the next time we gather and meet. Hopefully, that will be soon.
Hopefully.
Right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.